So what type of relationship should the UK now be establishing? Well, to discuss Britain and Europe's future in the short and longer term, I'm joined by Lord Digby Jones, who's held some of the highest positions in British business. He was Director General of the Employers Federation, the CBI, for 6 years, and then UK Trade and Investment Minister in 2007 to 2008. He described himself as a reluctant Brexiteer. Frances O'Grady, who's been an active trade unionist and campaigner all of her working life, she was appointed General Secretary of the British Trades Union Congress, the TUC, in 2013. The first woman ever to hold the post. She was firmly in the Remain camp. And Artur Fischer, as director of the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, he helped make the DAX index of top German companies a household name. He's now dividing his time between London and Berlin in his current job, which is chief executive of the Berlin Stock Exchange. And he would have liked the UK to remain in the EU. Welcome to you all. Digby, let me just start with you. As you say, a reluctant Brexiteer. Yeah. You are, of course, very much somebody who's acquainted with UK business. What was it about what the EU represented to the UK that you were uncomfortable with?
This is Asia's century. This is about a globalised world. And the EU was marching valiantly towards 1970. It was looking inwards. It was an amalgam of unaccountable, unelected people in Brussels with the vested interest of big business, the vested interest of trade unions. To me, and I've been on the inside, you know, I've sat there at these meetings, I would have loved to have voted to stay in a reformed EU. That's where I was. It's very publicly known. I had no confidence that, and I still don't, by the way, that the European Union will reform sufficiently to give 520 million people living in peace the healthcare, the pensions and the welfare they're going to need in Asia's century in 50 years' time. And the only way to look after our grandchildren in that world is to generate sufficient wealth to do so. And I have to say, the way it's set up, the way it conducts its business, there wasn't a prayer it will ever reform, and that's why I did it. OK, Frances, let's come to you. During the time that Britain has been a member of the EU, as Digby said, it has the power to impose regulations on British workers. Have they been broadly beneficial in your view?
Well, we very often hear them described as red tape, but of course the EU has provided a guarantee for rights that are crucial to working people, either new rights or stronger rights on everything from having the right to be consulted on redundancies to equal rights for part-time workers and agency workers. But the EU is also critical for working people in terms of jobs. It's about cheap trade, it's about being the destination for nearly half of our exports, and that means jobs. And there are a lot of people very worried today about what the future holds.
Art, let's come to you. Germany sees the UK obviously as a very crucial trading partner and counterbalance really within the EU, because it finds commonality in terms of economic policy with the EU more than it might do with France.
True, and it was a very sad day for us in Germany to see that Great Britain is going to leave us. And I also have to say that sad not just because of an economy point of view, but also because of Europe as a whole. Great Britain made a lot of important contributions, and it will be difficult to go ahead without that. So looking at the argument we heard earlier, I think it is also noticeable, at least when I just listened to you, that it was quite a self-centered, almost egoistic kind of statement, because we do know that Great Britain is very good, but we also have to take care in Europe of the weak ones, of the countries which are not where we are. And the reason why we do that is very selfish again, because we want to avoid going back to 1930, whatever. We want to make sure that we work together and not against each other.
But Digby, is this what you are saying, that in fact you want the UK really unshackled from Europe and its peculiarities?
Not in the slightest. And frankly, if you're going to start bringing people up in southern Europe that they believe in an economy that exports olives and imports BMWs, that makes Germany richer and them poorer, that is not egotistical in any way, shape or form for Britain. It might be for Germany, but it's not for Britain. And one of the formative moments I had actually in this whole issue was when I was trade minister, and I can remember sitting in Brussels and saying, why are we putting no tariffs on agricultural produce coming in from Africa raw, but we put tariffs, if we give them the value added to refine sugar, for instance, in Africa, and then cocoa's another one, and bring it in as refined, so the value added stays in the developing nation. Why is it you tariff that? I'll tell you why: to protect your markets and make your money in Europe. And if you really want trade to be a really good, beneficial thing in the world, the rich nations, such as us, such as Germany, and very much France, who are very protectionist, you should stop using Brussels to protect your markets and condemning Africa to taking our development aid check and buying their raw materials, and instead let them educate them, skill them, give them the ability to create wealth. That's how business can be a force for good. And all I got in return was, I'm not having farmers demonstrating in the Champs-Elysees say the answer's no. And I thought to myself, do you know, this is an egotistical, selfish argument from the forming members of the EU, not from Britain, my friend.
Francis, do you see the EU, had it become too introspective?
Look, the TUC and trade unions across Europe don't believe that the EU is perfect, but I think
But in what way was it not perfect?
At its heart, there are some important values here. I think we have to learn in this world that we all depend on each other, that if one country is doing well and another country is doing poorly, then that's actually a problem for all of us, and that we share an interest in making sure that the wealth that we all create is shared fairly. My concern is that we are going to see workers losing out in terms of their wages, their rights, their jobs. And our top priority, the decision has been taken, our top priority is that working people mustn't pay the price for Brexit.
And I completely agree with that. That actually, my vision is to have Britain engaging fully with our friends in Europe in a commonality of creating wealth and actually doing it off the back of skilled people. And look at the automotive industry in Britain. It's fully unionised. And it's very, very successful because they work, the unions and the manufacturers work in harmony and in partnership, and they get the skill up.
Right, but Art, to come to you, do you accept that Europe has become, perhaps has gone down a protectionist path, or it has gone down a path really as Germany being a dominant economy and every other economy having a dependence upon it?
Germany is, I don't want to say unfortunately, but it is the biggest member state in Europe. We can't change that, and we need to stand up to that responsibility.
What do you mean you can't change that? That asymmetry is part of the political project of Europe?
We are successful in our business. We are a big country, and we work very well with unions, by the way. We make them part of our supervisory board, which is a big step forward. So we now need to deal with that responsibility. I think Germany should be part of the EU or not isolated. And that's why I'm sad that with Great Britain starting this process, there is certainly the danger that others might look at this again. And that, again, will cause a negotiation to be very, very hard, because we need to make sure that nobody gets an appetite.
Oh, you mean punishment?
No punishment. No, self-protection. Self-protection.
Is the difference.
But this sounds like it playing into the concern that you had, that it had its own momentum, the EU. It was a political project, and that really it had ceased to add value to the people who it was supposed to serve.
Absolutely right.
Right. So why was it not possible to reform it from within?
Because the vested interest did not want to reform. A good example of the Common Agricultural Policy. 75% of the taxation spend in Europe, the donations in and the money out, goes on agriculture. Now, take a 21-year-old kid in Greece or Spain today, probably unemployed, if not, taking a big bung from Brussels to work in a subsidised industry called agriculture. Why don't you keep the money down in southern Europe to skill these people up, so that they're attractive to Northern Europe because they have a skill, they're attractive to the rest of the world in Asia Century because they have a skill, or, the best of all, they stay at home with a skill and attract inward investment and create wealth.
But you're discussing the wrong level. What we should let me just make that point. The level you should discuss is how comes that the British politicians and diplomats, which are the finest in the world, didn't manage to get allies and didn't manage to get their point across. That is a problem, because the UK has not sent their best people into the EU. The UK has not tried to change the EU hard enough. We would have welcomed more support in many of your points. We don't like some of the things that happen either.
No, okay, Francis, I want to come to you, if I may. Is it true, is what Digby is saying is true, that we are in fact subsidising industries that really don't promote our best interests in terms of skills?
As a Europe.
out of Europe?
Yeah.
Well, I think it depends very much on the industry. Automotive has a great record of success in investing in apprentices and adult skills too. We know that there's a long, dirty tail of small businesses who are not investing for the future, and the trade union movement across Europe has always argued that skills is a real priority for us. But I think what's clear is that young people in Britain voted to remain. The decision is clear. There's no going back on that decision. But I think we owe it to young people who are deeply worried about their future, their rights to seek jobs, not just people coming to Britain, but people going from Britain to other countries, their hopes for the future of ever getting a home or a decent job, let alone a good wage. And we owe it to them to make sure that the priority now is, across Europe, I would hope, is that that generation who are disaffected, who feel they haven't got a future, we start looking at inequality in Europe. It can't go on.